He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes hard. And then he said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. This house was always mine. Anyway, the sentence sliced through the air like broken glass. I stopped mid-step. My fingers tightened around the tea towels, still damp in my hands. It was a normal Wednesday. The sun had just started peeking through the curtains, casting soft lines across the kitchen floor. The scent of cinnamon rolls still lingered, from the batch I'd baked his favorite. But now, everything in the room felt colder, smaller, quieter. My own son, standing 5 feet from me, had just drawn a line in the sand I didn't know we were standing on. A house I had built with my late husband. A home layered with baby blankets, school portraits, and old love letters. Now reduced to a transaction in his tone. I searched his face, hoping it was a joke, a slip, a momentary frustration. But his jaw stayed locked. His eyes stayed distant. And that's when the warmth of my family home turned to stone beneath my feet. That one sentence changed everything. Not because of what it meant legally, but because of what it revealed emotionally. It told me how far gone we were. How quiet greed can be when it hides behind the mask of family. How easily love can be mistaken for ownership. I stood there, hearing my own heartbeat in my ears, realizing the boy I raised no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as an obstacle. That moment rewrote everything I believed about love, family, and legacy. And if your love has ever been mistaken for weakness, stay with me. After James passed, the silence in the house was unbearable. Not the peaceful kind, the aching kind. The kind that sits on your chest in the middle of the night and whispers, "You're on your own now." My son was only 8, too young to understand death, old enough to feel its absence. I remember sitting on the edge of our creaky bed, the funeral flowers already wilting in the vase, wondering how I'd hold it all together. No savings, no insurance. Just a boy who needed breakfast and a mother who needed strength she didn't have but would find anyway. I got a job at the diner, then another cleaning offices at night. And when that wasn't enough, I braided hair on weekends, sold baked goods at church, and taught myself how to fix leaky faucets and rewire outlets. Every dollar I earned had a purpose. Not for vacations, not for luxuries, but for one dream, a home that was ours. Not rented, not shared, ours. The plot was small, just a patch of land on the edge of town, but I saw more than dirt. I saw the future. I didn't hire contractors. Couldn't afford to. Instead, I found a retired handyman who taught me how to lay tile. I've bartered meals for materials. I'd painted the walls myself, each coat hiding a different kind of exhaustion. The first winter, the insulation was so thin we slept in our coats. The first spring, the roof leaked and soaked our only couch. But still we laughed. We danced in the kitchen when the fridge finally arrived. We celebrated when the lights stayed on all month. To my son, it was simply where he grew up. To me, it was a monument to survival. I still remember the day we planted the mailbox. He held the post steady while I poured in the concrete. We didn't say much, but when he looked up at me, eyes full of pride, I thought, this is what love builds. I made that house a home, with soft bed sheets and cinnamon smells. With hand-me-downs folded like treasure. With birthday cakes that sagged but still earned candlelit cheers. Every brick, every nail, every late-night sob into my pillow built more than walls. It built a sanctuary. So when he said, "This house was always mine anyway," it wasn't just an insult. It was erasure. He didn't see the bleach on my hands from scrubbing floors after work, the coins counted in grocery store parking lots, the way I went without so he could have new shoes every school year. He saw drywall. I saw sacrifice. He saw property. I saw promises. I once carried him through that front door after he'd scraped his knee on the playground. Now, he walked through that same door and saw a deed he felt entitled to. Maybe I made it too easy. Maybe I protected him too well. Maybe he never knew the cost because I never let him see the receipt. But I didn't just pay the mortgage. I paid in years of my life. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruelest part. You don't realize something's slipping until it's already out of reach. After the wedding, things changed. I expected some change, new wife, new routines, new responsibilities. I even told myself, give them space. Let them build their life. But space became silence, and silence turned into distance. At first, it was little things. Shorter phone calls, plans that got rescheduled, then canceled, then forgotten altogether. Instead of "Hi, Mom," I started getting "Hey, can't talk." But I'll text later. Later never came. When they did visit, it felt rehearsed, like checking off a box on a to-do list. They'd sit for half an hour, smile politely, compliment the pie I'd baked hand, then be gone before the kettle finished boiling. I remember setting the table one Sunday. His favorite roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almond slivers. I lit candles, put on the radio. Even wore that soft blue sweater he once said made me look like the sky. But the knock never came. Just a text. An hour after dinner was cold. "Sorry, we got tied up." Rain check. No apology. No voice. Just words on a screen. Typed too fast to feel sincere. He stopped calling it Mom's house. Started calling it the property. At first, I thought I misheard. But he said it again. And again, the property's in a great area now. We should really think about what to do with the property long term. You should get the property assessed just to know its worth. I laughed nervously. "Why are you calling it that?" He waved it off. "Just habit. It's what the guys at work say when they talk about real estate stuff." But it didn't feel like habit. It felt like detachment. Then came the first red flag. We were sitting in the kitchen, and he was scrolling through something on his phone, barely looking up. "Hey," he said casually, "do you have the deed handy?" I blinked. The deed. Yeah, just for some financial paperwork. Nothing big. Daniel's helping me with some investment stuff, and it'd be useful to have it on file. We'd give it right back. I stared at him. "You need the deed to this house for your investments." He shrugged. "It's just temporary. We're trying to qualify for something. It's easier if there's property equity involved." He said it so smoothly, so offhandedly, as if you were asking for a Tupperware dish. I said I'd think about it. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and left with leftover pie in hand. That night, I pulled the deed from the drawer where James and I had always kept it. I ran my fingers over the paper. Our names, our beginning, the proof that we had built something permanent. And I felt it, this tremor, this small, spoken warning inside me. But then I thought about the boy who used to draw hearts around the word Mom on his school papers. The boy who used to cry when I didn't kiss him goodbye twice. The boy who used to say, "You're my favorite person in the whole world." And I thought, no, he wouldn't. He couldn't, so I tucked the deed back in the drawer, locked it, and told myself I was being paranoid. Still, something had shifted. I could feel it in how he said goodbye. No hugs, no lingering at the door. Just, "Let me know when you find it, okay?" As if the home I bled to build was now just a line on a spreadsheet. He didn't bring up the deed again for a while. But I noticed other things. His wife started calling more than he did. They offered to help me simplify my bills. He emailed a form power of attorney with a friendly subject line, "just in case." And every time I hesitated, they told me it was for my own good, that they were just planning ahead, that they wanted to protect me. But I wasn't sure anymore who they were protecting. My son had stopped visiting, stopped listening, stopped seeing me as a person I was becoming. An account to manage, a property to transfer, a problem to solve. I still cooked for him on holidays, still sent birthday cards, still kept his childhood room just the way he left it, but he stopped asking about my day, stopped noticing the tremble in my hands, stopped calling me Mom like it meant something more than a title. And yet, I still wanted to trust him. Still wanted to believe he was the boy I once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms. But emotional neglect doesn't shout. It whispers. And by the time you hear it loud enough to recognize, it's already grown roots. It was a Wednesday morning. Crisp air, warm coffee, and the quiet hum of birds in the trees. I stepped outside with my watering can, like I did every morning. to check on the roses James and I had planted years ago. The wooden porch had always creaked under my feet, but that day, it betrayed me one step. One slip, one hard landing. I don't remember falling, only the sound would bone. Breath all hitting the ground at once. The neighbor found me minutes later, still clutching the watering can, its spout twisted beneath me like a broken wing. The doctor said it was a sprained wrist and some bruised ribs. Painful, yes. Serious? Not really. I was told to rest, to heal, to take it easy, but apparently to my son and daughter-in-law, that meant something entirely different. They arrived that evening, not with flowers or soup, but with questions. Rapid-fire questions. Were you alone? Why weren't you wearing your slip-proof shoes? Are you sure it was just a sprain? Do you remember what happened? It felt less like concern and more like an interrogation. I tried to reassure them. It was nothing. I'll be fine in a few days. But their expressions didn't soften. They exchanged looks behind my back. That was the first time I heard the word liability. They didn't say it to my face, but I heard it whispered from the kitchen while I lay on the couch. We have to step in. She's becoming a liability. We can't let her keep doing this alone. One fall could cost everything. She needs someone to take over. Take over. The next day, a security camera appeared by the front door. The day after that, one showed up in the hallway. No one asked me. No one explained. They just installed them for safety. Then came the groceries. My weekly trip to the market was suddenly unnecessary. We'll handle it, they said. They started picking up my mail, sorting my prescriptions, rearranging my kitchen. My routines weren't broken, but they insisted on fixing them. I wasn't consulted. I was informed. I should have felt cared for. Instead, I felt erased. They began speaking about me in the third person, even when I was in the room. She needs to start thinking about the future. She can't manage all this on her own. I wanted to scream. I'm right here. I'm still me. But instead, I smiled. I nodded and quietly began to observe. That's when I found the pamphlet in the trash can. Guardianship for aging parents. Legal control. Financial access. Medical decisions. All under the title, Protecting Those You Love. I read it twice. Then a third time. Every sentence felt like a warning wrapped in love. They weren't asking how to support me. They were strategizing how to contain me. Their voices in the hallway, once warm, had grown hushed and calculated. She's too proud to admit she needs help. If she won't sign willingly, maybe the doctor can recommend it. Better we do it now than wait until it's too late. It wasn't concern anymore. It was a campaign. I looked around my home, and realized I was being monitored. My choices were shrinking. My voice was fading. They said they wanted to help, but help doesn't come with hidden documents and silenced voices. I asked myself, were they helping me or replacing me? I remembered building this house with my hands, staying up late, sanding floors, saving coupons to buy paint, tucking my son into bed with lullabies echoing through these walls. And now, those same walls echoed with doubt, suspicion, control. A part of me wanted to believe they were just scared, that they meant well, that they were overreacting. But another part, the part still bruised from the fall, whispered, this isn't about love anymore. This is about power, and love without respect. That's not love at all. The knock came just after lunch. I was still rinsing out my teacup when I heard his voice calling, "Hey, Mom, you home?" He didn't wait for a response. The door creaked open, and in came my son. Holding a manila folder like it was nothing more than a grocery list, he kissed my cheek, sat down at the kitchen table, and said too casually, "It's time to transfer the deed, Mom." I blinked. What? He flipped the folder open with practiced ease. Inside, a neat stack of legal papers, clipped and color-coded. "Don't worry," he smiled. "It's all standard. Just a few signatures. Daniel and I have been talking with some folks about estate planning. And this just simplifies everything." I didn't reach for the papers. I stared at him. "I'm still living here," I said slowly. He nodded. "Of course." Nothing's changing. You'll still be here. This is just for formality. It protects you, actually. Protects me. That phrase again? Always wrapped in silk, hiding the blade beneath. What's in the folder? I asked. He slid it toward me, tapping the top sheet. Power of attorney. Just gives us the ability to handle things if you ever can't. And this one. He flipped a page. This transfers the deed into our name, but with a clause that you stay here for life. It's called a life estate. Totally normal. I felt a flush creeping up my neck. My fingers trembled just slightly, barely enough to notice. He pushed a pen toward me. I've already filled in everything, he said. All it needs is your signature. I stared down at the ink dot, so final, so small, so irreversible. My mouth was dry. My heart wasn't racing, but it had changed rhythm, like a warning knocking softly against my chest. I need my glasses, I said, standing slowly. They're right there on the counter. I picked them up, held them in my hand, then looked at him. I meant my reading ones. The strong pair? He frowned. You don't need the strong ones for this. It's just a few pages. But I was already walking slowly, deliberately toward the hallway in my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed. My hands gripped the glasses, though I didn't put them on. I needed a moment to breathe, to think, to not be under his gaze. A knock at the door. Mom, everything okay? Just a second. I looked at the photo on my nightstand, me and James, standing in front of this very house. He had one arm slung around me, and the other resting on the porch column. We'd built it from nothing, pouring every saved dollar into these walls. He used to say, this house is our anchor, no matter how hard the tides pull. And now our son wanted to pull the anchor out from under me. I walked back into the kitchen, sat down, folded my hands neatly in front of me. I'm not signing today, I said. Gently. My son's expression changed just a flicker. Not anger, not surprise, but disappointment sharpened by something else. We're just trying to help, he said. You don't want this house to get tied up in probate. This keeps it in the family. You're protected. Everyone wins. I nodded slowly, but I'm still the one who decides. And I need more time. He leaned back. The silence stretched. You don't trust me? He asked, voice lower now. I want to read everything carefully, I replied. That's all. The air turned heavier. The warmth that had once filled this kitchen felt miles away. I thought we were on the same side, he said, standing. He gathered the papers, perhaps a bit too quickly. I'll leave these here. Just look them over. No pressure, no pressure. The words hung in the air like fog. He left a few minutes later. No hug this time. No lingering smile, just the quiet click of the front door. I sat at the table long after he'd gone. The folder lay in front of me, still unopened. My tea had gone cold. My bones ached. But not from the fall. From the weight of understanding. I stared at the papers, wondering how many other mothers had signed away their homes with pens, handed to them by the very children they once rocked to sleep. The folder looked harmless, professional, clean. But I knew better now. Some signatures don't just change documents. They change everything. I didn't sign that day. And thank God I didn't. The next morning, I placed the manila folder in my handbag like it was something venomous, too dangerous to leave lying around, too heavy to carry without trembling. I needed clarity, and I knew exactly who to ask. My neighbor Beverly lived 2 doors down, a widow like me. Calm eyes, sharp mind, and hands that once stamped official documents for half the town. She was a retired notary, a woman who'd seen more legal fine print than most. Lawyers twice her age. When she opened the door, I didn't have to explain much. I think my son wants me to sign something, I said, holding out the folder. Her smile faded the moment she saw my face. We sat in her sunroom. Warm light spilled across her coffee table where she laid the documents out like puzzle pieces. She didn't speak for a long time, just scanned page by page. Clause by clause, her red reading glasses slipping to the tip of her nose. Then she exhaled. A long, slow, heavy breath. Mary, she said, voice low, if you had signed this. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. What is it? I asked. She pointed to a paragraph buried in the second half of the deed transfer. Clause 17B. Eviction, right? Grantors agreed to vacate the property within 60 days upon written notice due to planned structural renovations. I blinked. I thought it was a life estate, I whispered. He said I could live there forever. Beverly shook her head. That clause cancels it. Hidden, but legally enforceable. I felt my heartbeat move to my throat. He would have evicted me, I said slowly. From my own home. Beverly turned another page. Here's a clause assigning power of attorney to your son, full control of your finances, medical decisions, and property rights. I stared at the words, but they blurred behind tears. You're telling me? He tried to trick me into signing over my home, my money, and my life. She didn't answer. She just reached across the table and took my hand. Read this too, she said softly. Sliding the last page forward, it was a declaration of intent, dressed up as a legal formality. ... This transfer acknowledges that the recipient has long-term verbal claims to the property, having contributed to its maintenance. And the current owner recognizes such contributions. Verbal claims, a lie printed in ink. That's when it hit me. Like ice in my chest. He didn't ask for my home. He tried to take it not through conversation, not through a request, through ink, through clauses, through silence. The boy I raised, the one who cried into my shoulder after his first heartbreak, the one I fed when I barely had enough for myself, had looked me in the eye and handed me betrayal folded into legal terms. He called it protection. He called it love. But love doesn't need fine print. I looked around beverlysunroom.com. It's clean, filled with family photos and a shelf of dog-eared novels. A home filled with truth. And I realized my own home, the one I built brick by brick, had nearly become a stage for deception. I'm so glad I didn't sign. I whispered. You didn't. Beverly nodded. That's what matters now. But I couldn't shake the chill crawling up my spine. The quiet fact that if I had trusted just a little more blindly, if I hadn't misplaced my glasses, if I hadn't bought time, everything I loved could have disappeared in 60 days, not through a fire, not through a natural disaster, but through paperwork, written by my own child. Beverly poured me tea. And we sat for a while, silent women with loud hearts. I clutched the folder as I left. Not like something precious, but like evidence. Something I would not let out of my sight, because now I knew the truth. And the truth was this: I was never asked. I was targeted, and what they didn't know, what they had underestimated, was that I still knew how to fight quietly, with signatures of my own, with truth, with witnesses. I didn't sleep that night. The folder sat on the kitchen counter like a silent threat. And I walked past it again and again, every time I went to refill my tea, every time I paced the hallway, every time I looked out the window pretending not to think. But I was thinking about every meal I'd made, every bill I'd paid, every time I told myself he's just busy when he didn't call for weeks. By morning, I wasn't angry. I was clear, so I called him. Come by after work. I said, simple, calm, like I was offering leftovers. He arrived just before 6. His car engine growling into the driveway like it owned the place. He walked in with that same casual confidence, probably expecting to collect a signature. But I was already at the kitchen table. Papers laid out before me, not his version, but my copies, with Beverly's notes in yellow highlights. He looked at them, then at me. You read them? He asked. I did a pause, then a shrug. Like it didn't matter. I figured you might. But, Mom, he laughed under his breath. You were just going to give it to me eventually. Why does it matter when the paperwork gets done? I didn't answer. I wanted him to speak. He pulled out a chair. Didn't sit. Look, you're not using the upstairs anymore. The roof needs work. You've been saying you're tired lately. It just made sense to put things in order. Since that word felt like vinegar on my tongue. So I said, Slowly, you wrote up documents giving yourself control over my money, my house, and my medical decisions. Because it made sense. His expression didn't change. It's not about control. It's about planning. You're not getting any younger. Mom, there it was. Not even sugar-coated, not even softened. You're not getting any younger. As if aging forfeits ownership. As if turning gray meant signing away a legacy. I stood. Not fast. Not dramatic, just enough to let my voice meet him eye to eye. You could have talked to me. I said I did. He replied, no. I said. You handed me a pen and a deadline. You didn't talk. You presumed. He leaned against the counter now. Arms crossed, defensive posture masked as relaxed. You always said I'd get the house one day. One day. I echoed. Not today. Not behind my back. Not like this. He sighed, exasperated now. Mom, stop making this dramatic. You were just going to give it away anyway. That sentence broke something in the room. Not a loud crack, but a quiet snap like thread being pulled too tight and fraying apart. I stepped closer. You think because I'm older, because I use a cane now, that I don't see what you're doing? He didn't answer. You think I didn't notice how you stopped calling it my house? How you call it the property now? How you talk about upstairs renovations when I'm still living downstairs? I shook my head. I raised you better than this. He scoffed. You act like I'm robbing you. You're not, I said. You're erasing me. And doing it with a smile. He rolled his eyes. You're being emotional. No, I said. I'm being exact. The air between us felt like static. You would have let me go quietly, I continued. Signed me into the background of my own life. And then I said the words I had, rehearsed all night. You don't get to erase me while I'm still alive. He blinked. I waited for a retort. A defense, a flicker of regret. None came. Just that same tight-lipped silence, so I gathered the papers. Put them back in the folder and looked him square in the eye. I won't be signing anything. Not now, not ever. He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. I'm maybe your mother, but I'm still the woman who paid for this roof, built this home, and buried her husband under the oak tree in the backyard. That means something. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I watched him turn, walk to the door, and pause. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I replied. I'm finally not. And with that, he left. The house felt lighter. Not happier, but clearer. And clarity, I've learned, is its own kind of peace. The next morning, I opened the kitchen drawer that used to hold birthday candles and rubber bands. Now it held something heavier. An old business card, faded edges. Slightly bent, but still readable. Gerald Whitman, attorney at law. He'd been our lawyer since James and I signed our first mortgage papers, back when we were two kids trying to turn a patch of Michigan dirt into a home. I hadn't called Gerald in years, not since James's funeral. But I didn't hesitate. When I walked into his office, I felt strangely calm. There was no fear. No second guessing, dodge. Just a woman with a folder in her purse and clarity in her chest. He stood when he saw me. Mary, it's been a while. I smiled. I'm here for business. My business. Not James's. That made him pause just for a second. I handed him the papers. The same ones my son had handed me. Gerald read them like a surgeon. Quiet, exact. When he finished, he looked up with a grim face. This was no mistake, he said. He's attempting full control, medical, financial property. With that one signature, you would have lost everything. I know, I said. He leaned forward. So, what do you want to do? I reached into my purse again. This time, not with someone else's papers, but with mine. I want to rewrite my will. And I did. We spent 3 hours that day, not just amending documents, but reclaiming space. I revoked power of attorney. I updated my deed with protections to prevent unwanted transfers. I designated healthcare proxies who had no ties to manipulation, just care. Then came the part that made my hands tremble the most, the beneficiaries. Gerald cleared his throat gently. Do you still want your son listed? I shook my head, not as it stands. Not until he learns what love without leverage looks like. Instead, I added names that hadn't asked but had shown up. A K, nurse, who braided my hair in the hospital and sat with me during lunch breaks. A cousin who called every Sunday, never asking for anything, just listening. My neighbor Beverly, who didn't just notarize you but witnessed the truth with me. And for the first time in weeks, my pen didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a sword and a shield. I signed each page with intention not to punish, not to hurt, but to reclaim. By the time we finished, Gerald looked at me with something like respect. Maybe, you handled this with more grace than most, he said. I shrugged. I didn't come here for grace. I came for ownership. We stood, and he walked me to the door. Before I left, I turned back. This house, I said, it's more than wood and walls. It holds birthdays, grief, laughter, and mornings where I thought I couldn't make it, but did anyway. He nodded. I wanted to outlive me, but I wanted to remember who built it, and I meant every word when I got home. I took the updated documents, still warm from the copier, and placed them in a fireproof box. Then I opened the windows wide. Fresh air swept through the rooms. Light caught the floorboards where my son had once taken his first steps. He had almost taken everything, but almost is not a deed. And from that day forward, I knew this. I may not live forever, but my story will. And this time, it's mine. I didn't plan to write the letter, but some truths don't leave you alone until they're written. It started with a blank sheet of paper and the silence of an early morning. No television, no ticking clock, just the creak of the house I had built, reminding me it was still mine. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I once packed school lunches, sewed buttons back onto little shirts, and cried into coffee when the world felt too much. Now I sat with a pen, a different kind of stitching dot. I began slowly, not out of hesitation but care. Dear Thomas, you once called this house your home. I did too. The words surprised me with their softness. This letter wasn't a reckoning. It wasn't a slap. It was a record of what had been, of what would never be again. I remember your muddy shoes by the back door. The crayon drawings on the wall, I never scrubbed them off. I remember staying up when you were sick, cooling your forehead with a cloth, whispering that everything would be okay. I remember the way you used to run into my arms like they were your entire world. And for a while they were. I paused, let the ink-dry dot memories have weight. But they're not contracts, I continued. Do you remember how we built this place? Not just with nails and paint, but with birthdays and forgiveness and homemade pie. This house was more than property. It was proof that I could survive your father's death, that I could raise you alone, that love could be a roof, even in winter. The words started flowing faster now, like a faucet that had been waiting to be turned on. You stopped calling it home. The day you called it equity, you stopped seeing me the day you started. Seeing a title, I breathed out. I wasn't crying, not anymore. Thomas, this letter isn't punishment. It's a map to show you where you lost me. I wrote about the day he stopped visiting, the moment he asked me to transfer the deed as if it were overdue, the way his eyes never softened. Even when mine did, I wrote about how I had protected him from every hurt I could, except the one he brought to my doorstep. You didn't need to steal what I would have given you with open hands. One day, but you couldn't wait. You couldn't look me in the eye and ask. You drafted the future in secret and forgot that I was still breathing in the present. I folded the letter once, then opened it again. It needed a final paragraph, one that told the truth without cruelty. You may still believe this house was always yours, but it wasn't. It was mine. Every brick, every bill, every blessing. Until the day I chose otherwise. I didn't sign it, love. Mom, I didn't sign it, goodbye. I just signed my name, Mary. Not because I stopped being his mother, but because I started being myself again. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter, not hidden, not dramatic, just visible. Then I opened the front door and stepped outside into the quiet morning. The air was cool, still holding the edge of spring. I walked to the mailbox and felt the gravel shift under my feet. The same path I had walked when waiting for his college acceptance letter. When I sent out care packages. When I hoped. Now I wasn't waiting. I returned inside, sat on the couch, and waited. At noon, his car pulled in, the tires pressing down on the driveway like a threat. He walked in without knocking, saw the letter, didn't say a word. Read it standing up when he finished. He looked at me, but not with sorrow, not with remorse, just disbelief. "You really did it?" he asked. "I did. You cut me out?" "No," I said. "You stepped out. I just locked the door behind you." His jaw clenched. He opened his mouth to respond, but I stood. "This house," I said, "isn't just wood. It's who I had to become after your father died. It's every shift I worked when you were in school. It's every night I cried alone and still woke up at 5 a.m. to pack your lunch." He tried to interrupt. I raised my hand. "I'm not throwing away a legacy so you can flip it for profit. I'm not trading memory for manipulation." He left without slamming the door, just silence, which said more than rage ever could. That night, I passed by the kitchen. The letter still sat there, folded. Unread again, but it didn't matter, because I had written it. And sometimes, the power isn't in whether they understand you. It's in knowing you finally understood yourself. There's a difference between living in a house and truly belonging in it. For months after the confrontation, I tiptoed around my own home. Not out of fear, but disbelief. Disbelief that something so sacred could have come so close to being stolen by blood I once carried. But something changed the day I hung the title deed on the hallway wall. I didn't tuck it away in a drawer. I didn't seal it in a fireproof box. I framed it behind glass in full view, not as a trophy, but as a testament that what I built would no longer be quietly claimed or repurposed in secret. The house was mine. But now I was mine too, and I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life walking on emotional eggshells. Not for a son who saw me as a stepping stone. Not for the silence I'd been trained to keep. So I did what many might have called strange. I started over without moving an inch. The first to arrive was Ruth, my church friend who'd been living alone after losing her sister. She moved into the guest bedroom with a single suitcase and a smile that filled the hallway. We planted tomatoes on the weekend. She sang while making tea. And when I cried in the laundry room that first night, she didn't ask questions. She just folded towels beside me and hummed. Then came Angela, my niece, the one whose father, my brother, said she was too sensitive and too artistic. She wasn't broken. She was just kind. She painted a mural in the back room, vines curling along the corners, dandelions blowing into stars. Finally, I opened the basement apartment to a young woman named Lena, a tenant, yes, but also a friend in the making. She watered the porch plants when I forgot. She left fresh bread outside my door once a week. We had dinner twice a month, no pressure, just presence. And just like that, the house began to breathe again. Not with ghosts or grudges, but with grace. We called ourselves the Sunday table. Every weekend, we sat around the dining room with mismatched chairs, chipped mugs, and no obligations to be anything but safe. That table saw laughter. It saw apologies and plans and new birthday songs. It saw women of different ages, all of whom had been told, in some way or another, that they were too much or too little. But here, we were just enough. Then one day I stood on the porch and looked out at the yard, a patch of dirt once overrun by weeds and neglect. I saw more than grass. I saw a space waiting to hold meaning. So I called it the legacy garden. We started small, one raised bed. Each woman planted something. Ruth chose rosemary for remembrance. Angela chose marigolds for joy. Lena picked lavender for peace. And me, I chose daffodils. Not because they were pretty, but because they return year after year. No matter how harsh the winter, we dedicated the garden to mothers who were pushed out of their own stories. We printed a small sign, rooted, not replaced. People started coming quietly. Respectfully, women who had signed away homes out of guilt. grandmothers whose calls went unanswered, widows who were told their time was up. They came with seeds and silence and stories. And we made space, and the house. It began to echo with a new kind of legacy, not of inheritance, but of intention. One night, I walked the hallway in my robe, the same creaky boards underfoot. I paused before the framed title on the wall. My fingers touched the glass, but I wasn't thinking about ownership anymore. I was thinking about belonging. My son hadn't called again. Not since the letter. Not since the truth was too loud to ignore. And that was okay. Some relationships can't be repaired until both people stop pretending the wound was smaller than it was. I didn't write him off. I just stopped writing him into every chapter. Instead, I wrote new pages. I learned how to order groceries online. I joined a book club. I let Angela teach me how to use her camera, even though I took 10 pictures of my own chin before figuring it out. I lived not as a mother, widow, or woman of a certain age, but as Mary, a name I once only used on forms, now spoken with pride. One evening, I sat on the porch, tea in hand. As the sun sank behind the roof I had worked my whole life to hold on to. Ruth was knitting. Angela was sketching. Lena was humming something I didn't recognize. I looked at them and saw not replacements for family, but evidence of healing. As the breeze brushed past us, lifting the curtains just slightly, I closed my eyes and I whispered something I never thought I'd say. He said it was his, but now it's mine in more ways than the deed could ever say.